What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going over week 3 and we're going to be talking about must-add players, the best schedules, the best streamers, and everything in between. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. Before we get into these players, first off, follow my Twitter /X at FiredUpFantasy. I'm very active on there, giving you guys up-to-date fantasy information, injuries, ads, drops, deployment changes, etc. Some memes there as well. I definitely post some good stuff there. But yeah, that's that. And also Discord. If you guys want to join the Discord community, I'm trying to grow it. I'm chatting in there with you guys, giving you guys advice, just a good community vibe. If you have any ad drop questions, yeah, the link is in the description if you guys want to join. Also, guys, here's my pick'em for tonight's games. Use my referral / promo code FIREDUP for 100% match deposit on Drafters Fantasy Sports, and use that free bonus money to do pick'ems on the NHL, NFL, and more. And also best ball drafts throughout the week as well. It's available in all of Canada, including Ontario, most US states. More info in the comments, guys. Download the app, sign up using referral code FIREDUP, and gamble responsibly. We have a lot of players to talk about here, and let's start with defensemen. And let's start with who may be the best waiver wire pickup at the moment. This player is Oliver Ekman-Larsson of the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a must-add player. Like, you're not going to be able to pick this guy up for much longer if he's available. And the reason why he's a must-add player is because he has taken over that first-line power play spot over Morgan Rielly. Not only is he on this power play, but he's also leading the Leafs in ice time per game with 21 minutes and 50 seconds, which was very surprising to me. But I don't know. He looks pretty good out there. He definitely passes the eye test, and he's getting good even strength and power play deployments. So, yeah, this is a no-brainer, guys. At least have a top 10 power play in the NHL. And he also puts up really good peripherals. Like, he puts up good shots, hits, and blocks. So, yeah, he could be the full package if he holds on to this power play deployment. So, yeah, absolutely a must-add player. Next up, we have Justin Faulk with the St. Louis Blues. I've already talked about him quite a bit. And I included him in my last 2 waiver wire videos. So, just quickly, I'll say, you know, he's quarterbacking the first-line power play, getting good even-strength ice time, really solid shots, hits, and blocks. Depends on your league settings, obviously. But, yeah, this is a no-brainer to me. He's probably not available anymore. As you can see, his roster percentage has gone up way higher than it was like a week or 2 ago. But if he is available, I would definitely take a look at him. Then we have Jake Walman of the San Jose Sharks. I've also talked about this guy quite a bit. And in my opinion, his roster percentage of 13% is far too low. Now, I do want to preface this with saying that if your league counts plus-minus, he could definitely be at a disadvantage. And it also depends on your specific scoring settings as well, because the main strength of Walman in fantasy is the amount of blocks that he puts up. He puts up solid shots and hits as well, which is a benefit, but the blocks is really where it's at. So if your league doesn't heavily value peripherals, he may be not as good as I'm hyping him up to be. With that being said, the peripherals are nice, but what's really interesting about Walman is that he is leading the Sharks in ice time. He is getting a ton of ice time, guys. 24 minutes and 36 seconds of ice time per game. And his previous high season in terms of ice time was 19 minutes and 46 seconds of ice time per game. This is almost a 5-minute bump going from the Red Wings to the Sharks. So we're going to see elite peripherals here, and he can score goals too. So I think we're going to see 10 goals potentially, 30 to 40 points, and then elite peripherals. So I just think 13% rostered is way too low, because in many leagues, that is really good. The next player we have to talk about is Lane Hutson of the Montreal Canadiens. I doubt he's available anymore, and I could say I was wrong about Lane Hutson. I wasn't expecting this amount of ice time that we've seen so far. He's leading the Canadiens in average ice time per game with 22 minutes and 55 seconds. Now, this is a little bit skewed because Matheson left with an injury, so Hutson was forced to play these minutes. And that is another thing to discuss here, guys. Mike Matheson is injured. I don't know if it's long-term. I don't think it's long-term, but we're going to see Hutson on the first-line power play at least for a game or 2, and that's what it's looking like. Even if Matheson doesn't miss any games, I do think there is a good chance we see Hutson take over this first power play unit sooner than later. So, yeah, there's certainly a lot of point potential, and he looks really good out there. I will say that there's no guarantee they take Matheson off the first unit. We will see what happens, guys. He is still a rookie, and Matheson was great in that role last season and racked up a lot of power play points. So I can't predict the future for that, but it's definitely worth adding him in case it happens, because he can certainly rack up a lot of points with this even strength deployment that he's already getting. and then getting on that first unit. The only downside I want to mention with Hutson is his lack of shots and hits. His blocks have been okay so far, but I'm not expecting them to be that good. So in general, if you're in a league with heavy peripherals, he will be at a disadvantage. Even a Yahoo default league heavily values shots and blocks, so that's something to consider, guys. And he may not have the best plus minus either. So yeah, there's pros and cons, but I still think he's worth an add considering the point upside. Next up, we have Brandt Clarke. He's been a must-add player, guys. The reason for this is because he's quarterbacking that first-line power play with Doughty injured, and he's been pretty good on there. So definitely worth taking a look at. I will say that his even strength ice time is not great. As you guys can see, 17 minutes and 17 seconds of average ice time per game. So yeah, ceiling's capped because of that, but he'll rack up power play points, and his peripherals aren't that bad either. He puts up decent blocks. He likes to shoot the puck. Hasn't been shooting the puck too much this season, but he will, guys. So yeah, he's a solid add. The next defenseman here is Pavel Mintyukov of the Anaheim Ducks. And what we're seeing with Mintyukov is pretty good deployment. He's averaging 22 minutes and 43 seconds of ice time per game. And I could certainly say that he passes the eye test. Basically with Mintyukov is that this deployment is very encouraging. He's a guy that put up pretty good peripherals last year in terms of hits and blocks. So he has that floor baked in. And the only thing that we have to wait and see about is the power play usage. That could be the only negative downside to Mintyukov. The fact that the Ducks spread out the usage for both the first and the second power play unit. So that's something to keep an eye on for. We've seen it be Jackson Lacombe, and then Lacombe went down with an illness, and then it's been Zellweger. So we're just going to have to see how that all plays out. But regardless, he's only 11% roster on Yahoo, and he's showing some promising even strength deployment. So definitely worth a look. Finally, the last defenseman, and listen, guys, I want to say that this could easily be a complete dud. This player is Darren Raddysh of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, Raddysh does not have the best even strength deployment. He doesn't put up a lot of points. He's not some sort of gifted offensive player. But the reason why I have him on this list is because he's currently on the first power play unit. That is right. Darren Raddysh is on the first unit with Kucherov, Gensel, Point, and Victor Hedman. Raddysh is on the left circle in Stamkos' spot. He has a really powerful, strong shot. So I guess they're just trying to use him as the Stamkos replacement because he just fits naturally there as a right-handed player. But I don't know how long it's going to last. It's tough having Raddysh on the first power play unit over Hagel. Who knows what they'll do? I'd imagine they'll probably mix it up quite a bit. Like sometimes they'll have Nicholas Paul on there, maybe Hagel, maybe Sorelli. But for now, because he's a right-handed player and they want to have him on that left circle, he could stay there for some time. We'll see what happens, but he's definitely worth adding in some deeper leagues, right? Like if you're in a 16-team or an 18-team league, a guy that's on one of the best power plays in the NHL as a defenseman is certainly worth rostering. With some other defenseman adds, Kaiden Guhle, who is injured, not sure about the timeline with that injury, but he puts up amazing blocks and hits. So if your league values those, if you're in a category league or a bangers points league, he's going to be really good. With that being said, his production will slow down, guys. Could be a sell high candidate, but doubt you're getting much for him. Some other guys here, Eric Gustafsson is back. He was scratched just one game, or maybe in two, but he's back and he's quarterbacking that first unit. So he definitely has value, but he doesn't put up shots, hits, and blocks. So it really depends on your league settings. With that being said, Adam Boqvist is another guy who's quarterbacking a first-line power play, quarterbacking the Panthers power play. But the problem is that his even strength deployment is terrible. Like, I think he had like 13 minutes of ice time in his last game, and he puts up really bad peripherals. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe we could see some improvement in his even strength ice time, but yeah, it's not looking good, at least for that, right? Like, he's not going to put up any categories if you're in a category league. But if you're in like a straight points league where, it's a heavy emphasis on just goals, assists, and power play points, then Boqvist can be pretty solid. Now we have to talk about two Ducks defensemen, Olen Zellweger and Jackson Lacombe. What happened with this situation is Zellweger was actually looking like the odd man out. Like, it wasn't looking like Zellweger was going to be in the lineup. But then Jackson Lacombe went down with an injury, and Zellweger got put in. So with Lacombe out, currently Zellweger is running the first power play unit and getting some even strength ice time. So could be worth a look in the short term. I thought he was going to be quarterbacking the first power play unit regardless, but it didn't look like that to start the year. So might just be a short term ad. And then with Jackson Lacombe, Supposedly, he really impressed in preseason, and, he was slated to be top pairing, top unit, which I don't think is going to stick, but something worth considering when he comes back. Keep an eye out for the deployment and the power play situation with the Ducks. All right, now before we talk about the official forward ads, let's talk about some short-term ads among forwards, okay? These are guys that are good in the short term, whether that be just a week or maybe a month, but they're not the best long term. So more of a stream, but some of these options are really good. The best option is obviously Ross Colton, guys. Avalanche have a lot of injuries. Lekkonen's not back yet. Nichushkin is still not eligible to return. Landeskog, we don't know what's going on there. Drouin just went down with an injury. Don't have the exact timeline, but Bednar said he's going to miss some time. So with all these injuries happening, Colton finds himself on the first line and the first power play unit. You can see with his ice time, guys, 18 minutes and 42 seconds of ice time per game, playing with McKinnon and Rantanen, even strength and all the man advantage. It's a no-brainer, guys. And he puts up monster hits. So if your league values hits, he is going to have a massive edge. But that being said, not a long-term hold, but until Drouin comes back, Colton is absolutely a must-add player. And then another must-add player is Casey Mittelstadt. Mittelstadt only has center eligibility, doesn't put up the best peripherals, but he's on the second line and he's on the first power play unit with all the injuries that I just mentioned. So he should rack up a decent amount of points on this man advantage. Some other short-term ads, this might only be for the next week or so. Barkov is still injured. He is skating on his own, and they're saying he's going to be back potentially for the New York road trip. So yeah, maybe only a week, but Sam Bennett and Evan Rodriguez are on the first power play unit with Barkov's absence. And then Anton Lundell finds himself on the first line and is playing really well on that line with Eetu Listerainen and Sam Reinhart. And Eetu Listerainen is also on this first line, like I said. So those guys are good options in some deeper leagues. Finally, a new short-term ad. Could be long-term. We just don't have the details on this Victor Olofsson injury, but this player is Pavel Dorofeyev of the Vegas Golden Knights. Olofsson was injured. We don't have a timeline, but the first game that we saw with him out, Dorofeyev ended up on the first power play unit. He also scored on this man advantage, and I think he's going to stay there because as a lefty, he fits on the right circle opposite of Eichel on the flank. So yeah, definitely worth a look. He doesn't have the best peripherals, guys, but he's on a power play that's cooking right now, and he's only 2% rostered. So absolutely take a look at him if he's available. Like I told you guys earlier, follow my Twitter at FiredUpFantasy because as soon as we get Olofsson updates, injury updates, I'm going to tweet about them and you'll be able to understand up-to-date fantasy information. Okay, moving on to the official forward ads. The first player we have to talk about is a no-brainer waiver wire pickup, and that player is JJ Peterka. Peterka is only 37% rostered on Yahoo, which is way too low. He only has right wing eligibility, but he should get left wing soon because he plays on the left wing. Don't know what Yahoo's doing, guys. They need to get it together. But the great thing with Peterka is that he's line one with Thompson and Tuck, and he's on the first power play unit as well. If you're looking at his ice time, it doesn't paint the full picture because he was injured in like the first or the second period in one of the games. But in the games that he's played in full, his average ice time has been 19 minutes and 40 seconds. This is elite deployment, guys. Obviously, a big thing that we need to see is the Sabres running a dedicated first unit, which is something that they haven't really done in the last couple of games due to Peterka's injury and the fact that the power play has been terrible. So I think they will eventually. But yeah, I just think, first of all, he has really good deployment. And then second of all, he looks really good out there. Like, he certainly passes the eye test. And we saw last year, I've been talking about Peterka quite a bit, that he had really good production despite limited minutes and limited power play time. So we're going to see more power play time this year. He loves to shoot the puck, and I just think he has a lot of breakout potential, guys. So this is a guy that you need to add before it's too late. Another forward ad here is Bryan Rust. This is a no-brainer, guys. 59% roster is way too low. He has elite deployment, line one, power play one with Crosby, amazing shot and hit protection. This is a no-brainer, guys. Add him before it's too late. Another player here is Teuvo Teravainen. Only downside to Teravainen is the lack of peripherals. Not the best shot volume. Hits and blocks aren't good, so he may not be good depending on your league, guys. But the fact is, he's line one and power play one with Bedard, and he is getting the best deployment he has gotten in like 4 or 5 years. Right now, he's averaging 18 minutes and 54 seconds of ice time per game, which is the second highest of his career. And I think it's the highest in the last 6 years. Because in Carolina, they spread out the usages for both power plays. They spread out the even strength ice time. But on Chicago, they are running heavy usage for the first unit and running that top line of Nick Foligno, Connor Bedard, and Teuvo Teravainen quite a bit. So I just think there could be a possibility that Teravainen puts up 70 points. There's no guarantee that happens, guys, but it's certainly within the range of outcomes for Teravainen. Could see him put up 60 to 70 points and have some pretty good weeks. So definitely worth a look if your league doesn't heavily value peripherals. Moving on, we have Gabriel Vilardi of the Winnipeg Jets. I'm recording this before they play the Sharks tonight, and we definitely could see Vilardi have a big game. But the fact is, guys, 32% rostered on Yahoo is far too low. Now, I do want to say, yes, his peripherals are not that good, right? If you're in a league that heavily values shots, hits, and blocks, he's not going to be that great. But a lot of leagues don't value those that heavily. So if it doesn't, you need to take a look at him. The fact is that he's line one with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. He's first line power play. This is elite deployment, guys. 19 minutes of ice time per game so far in the 3 games that we've seen him play. And he's going to have some monster games and weeks. And his roster percentage is going to go way up. 2 years ago, he paced for 30 goals. Last year, he paced for 36 goals. You just can't deny his deployment on this team. And I'm telling you, he's going to have big games very soon. And you may regret not picking him up. Next up is Nick Schmaltz. This is another situation where he doesn't have the best peripherals. Like his shot volume is bad. His hits and blocks aren't good. So yes, in some leagues, he's not that great. But the fact is that he's first line with Keller and Barrett Hayton, a line that definitely has a lot of chemistry. He's first line power play. Not sure if he's going to be first line power play the entire year, but I expect him to be because Logan Cooley is on the second unit in Keller's spot. So it just makes sense to have Schmaltz in the bumper where he normally plays. But yeah, I mean, deployment's really good. 18 minutes and 41 seconds of ice time per game. Heavy usage for that first unit. And you can see here, guys, that he's put up very good points in the last couple of years. In 21-22, he paced for 76 points. In 22-23, he paced for 75 points. And last year, he paced for 63 points. So he can put up points, and he's certainly underrated. So yeah, add him, guys, if your league doesn't heavily value peripherals. And last thing here, dual eligibility, center right wing is also solid too. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
One player I needed to edit in here is Tyler Toffoli of the San Jose Sharks. He's getting solid deployment. He's in line one, first line power play. He's going to be on a line with Celebrini when Celebrini comes back from his injury. And he loves to shoot the puck and score goals. So as long as he has this deployment, he's going to be solid. And his roster percentage is like 53 or 54% right now. So definitely too low of a roster percentage currently with his situation. So yeah, I would take a look at him.
Next up is Tom Wilson, 40% roster on Yahoo. The big thing I want to emphasize here is that the big edge that he has is his hits, okay? If your league values hits, he is a must-add player. If your league doesn't value hits, he's still solid, but he's not as good, so something to keep in mind. But what I'm liking about Tom Wilson is that his deployment so far has been absolutely elite. He's averaging 19 minutes and 41 seconds of ice time per game. He is line 2, power play 1, and he also puts up really good blocks too, guys. Shot volume's decent, but for a forward, his blocks are elite, so he has that edge as well. I'm expecting Wilson to have a bounce-back season, and you could potentially see him put up 55 to 60 points with really good peripherals. So, yeah, this is a no-brainer to me. Next up is Josh Norris of the Ottawa Senators. Only center eligibility, I understand this, but 18% roster on Yahoo is far too low, and let me tell you why. The reason is pretty simple. It's his deployment. 18 minutes and 22 seconds of ice time per game so far in the top 6 on the first power play. Looks pretty good out there. And also, if your league values hits, he's going to have a big edge against a lot of players. He's a guy that could potentially put up 100 plus hits, maybe 120 hits in a full year. So he has that edge if your league counts it. If Norris is healthy, I bet his roster percentage on Yahoo is going to be like 50 to 60% very soon. So get ahead of your league mates and add this guy. Next up, a new must-add player here. A guy that's shown a lot of promise this season so far. That player being Yegor Chinakov of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I know it's very early on, but what we've seen so far is very impressive. He's line 1 with Sean Monahan and Kirill Marchenko, a line that seems to have a lot of chemistry. And he's also on the first power play unit as well, a power play that he's already put up a couple of power play points on. In 4 games, he has 3 power play points. He has 6 points total in 4 games, so very solid. And what's the most promising right now is his ice time. He currently is averaging 18 minutes and 44 seconds, the highest of his career. And we saw last season that he paced for 24 goals and 20 assists, despite 15 minutes and 10 seconds of ice time per game. So solid production despite limited minutes. And now we're seeing more than 3 more minutes of ice time per game this season compared to last. I also want to mention that this guy puts up very solid peripherals. He's shooting the puck a decent amount. He puts up good hits. He puts up good blocks. So he's going to have an edge in a lot of leagues. He's going to fill your categories. And he is only 23 years old, guys. He's a former first-round pick. There's breakout potential. And he's definitely worth adding in case he does turn out to be a legit breakout player. Next up is Pavel Zacha. Listen, guys, I understand that he has not produced, but you have to look at the deployment, okay? Deployment means everything. He's line 1 with Pasternak. He's power play 1. His average ice time is 19 minutes and 11 seconds. And if your league counts hits, he puts up a lot of hits. So lots of things I like about Zacha, and I would say be patient with Zacha, okay? If you own him, don't panic drop him. There is potential with this deployment, and as long as he keeps this deployment, he should produce. Next up is Nick Foligno of the Chicago Blackhawks. He is only 4% rostered, guys, so he's available in most of your leagues, and he could be a very interesting sleeper for the rest of the year. The reason for this is because he got moved up to the top line with Connor Bedard and Teuvo Teravainen, and he has looked really good on there. It seems like he's building chemistry with those guys, so that's great. And he's also on the first power play unit as well. He actually scored a power play goal last night off an amazing feed from Teravainen. Bedard had the no-look pass to Teravainen. Teravainen gave it to Foligno. And I think there's a good chance he gets this deployment for the rest of the year because he is a solid net front player. Obviously, there's no guarantee with deployment, but since getting on the top line with Bedard, he has averaged 19 minutes and 7 seconds of ice time per game with 3 minutes and 16 seconds coming from the man advantage. So really good deployment, has looked very good so far. And the big thing that is also very good with Foligno is the amount of hits that he puts up. This guy could absolutely put up 200 plus hits, so he has a massive edge if your league values those. And yeah, I mean, just considering all this, guys, being 4% rostered, he is an absolute must-add player. Next up is Pierre-Luc Dubois. Don't think he's going to have some crazy good year, guys, but he's in the top 6. He's on the first power play unit. He looks pretty good out there, averaging 17 minutes and 20 seconds of ice time per game, which is solid. He has dual eligibility, center and left wing, and puts up good hits and blocks, guys. If your league values hits, he's going to be good in that regard. His blocks are good for a forward. His shot volume's okay. It's not the greatest, but I just think with all those things considered, 20% rostered on Yahoo is way too low. Another must-have player is Fabian Zetterlund. This will depend on your league settings, but he is a monster when it comes to blocks and hits. So if your league values those, he is underrated. I'm also a fan of his deployment. 17 minutes and 19 seconds of ice time per game is solid. He's in the top 6. He's on the first unit. And in the one game that we saw with Celebrini before he was injured, Zetterlund was on that top unit with Celebrini. So even when Celebrini comes back, there's a chance he holds this deployment. And like I said, really good peripherals. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan. Another player I would definitely take a look at is Kirill Marchenko. He's only 9% rostered on Yahoo, and I think he has potential, guys. I think there is a chance he could score 25 to 30 goals this year, and that's going to make him valuable in most leagues. The big thing I like about him is his ice time, 18 minutes and 21 seconds of ice time per game so far. Very small sample size, but still, it's almost a 2-minute increase from last year. It's the highest of his career. And he's on the first line with Sean Monahan and Yegor Chinakov, a line that seems to be building a ton of chemistry. The only downside of Marchenko is that he's not on the top power play unit. They split the usage between both the first and the second unit, but still, being on the 1B unit is not ideal. But I foresee this changing, guys, because Marchenko led the Blue Jackets in power play goals last year, and he's a pure goal scorer. So I'd imagine he would get on there. And also, Ken Johnson was injured, who was on that top unit. So somebody's going to have to replace him, and it could be Marchenko. Next up, we have some centers. I'll do this a little more rapid fire here. Barrett Hayton of the Utah Hockey Club. Line 1 with Keller and Schmaltz. Power play 1. I envision that he's going to keep this deployment the entire season. Solid peripherals. Yeah, definitely solid. Next, we have Adam Fantilli. This is a player that certainly has breakout potential, so he's worth holding in case that happens. But what I'm liking here is his ice time. So it's slowly creeping up from 15 to 16 minutes starting off. And then now we're seeing some 17 to 18 minute games, which could be really good long term. Right now, his average ice time is 17 minutes and 11 seconds, which is almost 2 minutes more than last season. So really good stuff in that department. But the only issue that I have with him is that, similar to Marchenko, he's on the 1B power play unit. I definitely think this could change, but as of right now, his ceiling is capped because of this. And even if it does change, they still may split the usage for both units, which caps his ceiling too. So I don't love that, but I certainly think there's a lot of potential because this guy has elite talent. And he's also a player, I haven't mentioned this, who puts up really good peripherals. So lots of shots and lots of hits. If your league values those, he's going to have an edge. And we could see him break out as we get longer into the season. He could be a guy that's putting up monster numbers in your fantasy playoffs. Next up, another Blue Jacket here, Sean Monahan. Doesn't have the best peripherals and only has center eligibility like these other guys, but his ice time right now is 20 minutes and 15 seconds of ice time per game, which is elite. And he's line 1 and power play 1. So definitely worth taking a look at in certain leagues. Another player I'm definitely a fan of is Morgan Frost, especially because he's only 5% roster currently. Way too low considering his deployment. And let's talk about his deployment, guys. 18 minutes and 12 seconds of ice time per game. I know we're only 4 games in, so this could definitely go down, but his previous highest ice time average was 16 minutes and 21 seconds 2 years ago. And last year, it was 15 minutes and 50 seconds. So we're seeing a huge bump in deployment. And not only even strength, but also on the man advantage. Right now, we're seeing heavier usage for the first power play unit than normal when it comes to the Flyers. Right now, this first line power play consists of Mintyukov, Frost, Konechny, Tippett, and Jamie Drysdale. And we did not see that last season. Last season, they mixed it up quite a bit. They split up the usage, tons of moving parts, but we're seeing a separation where this first unit is actually getting legit usage. And that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. With that being said, the obvious big bump for Frost in fantasy is Matvei Mintyukov being on his line at even strength and also boosting this power play, guys, because the Flyers have had the worst power play in each of the last 3 seasons. 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, dead last in the NHL. I think with Mintyukov coming in, and we're already seeing production on this power play, that this power play is not going to be the worst in the NHL. This definitely serves to benefit a lot of Flyers players, including Frost, because that's been a big downside to them in fantasy, a lack of power play points. So, yeah, definitely a fan of Frost. I think 5% roster is too low. And hopefully he can stick with this deployment. Hopefully we could see this type of ice time for the rest of the year. Next up is Leo Carlsson of the Anaheim Ducks. Only center eligibility. Doesn't put up the best peripherals, but he has breakout potential, guys. There's no other way around it. He's big, he's strong, he has really good hands, really good vision, and he's surrounded by a lot of young, talented players. So, yeah, I mean, there is a chance Carlsson could really pay off in the second half of the season, especially in your fantasy playoffs. You may have to hold him through some growing pains and the fact that the Ducks are still not the best team, but he's certainly worth taking a look, considering that he's only 17% rostered. The only thing I don't like is the deployment. His ice time hasn't been the best, and they're splitting the usage for both power play units. So we'll see how that shakes out, but if you're in a deeper league and he is available, I'd certainly take a look at him. Next up, a couple of more forwards here. Anthony Duclair, still in the first line power play over Brock Nelson. Could definitely change, right? Like this could just be an experiment that isn't going to work. But as long as he's first line with Horvat and Barzal even strength and first line power play, he has value. The only downside is lack of shot sets and blocks, but I think his roster percentage should be a little bit higher considering his deployment. And another player we have to talk about is Maxim Tsyplakov of the Islanders as well. Tsyplakov is only 6% rostered, and this is a guy that's on the first line power play over Palmieri right now. Yes, it could change, but first line power play is always great. And he's in the top 6 as well, on a line with Brock Nelson. So the deployment is there. The ice time is there, as you guys can see, 17 minutes and 42 seconds of ice time per game. And he also puts up really good hits as well. This is a guy that can put up 150 plus hits, so consider this if your league counts those. And another player that we have to talk about who also puts up good hits is Alex Laferriere of the Los Angeles Kings. Now, Laferriere was moved down from the top line. He's now on the third line, which isn't great. Byfield's back on the top line. We'll see how that shakes out. But the fact is, he's still on the first power play unit. This could change too, and if it does, then definitely not a fan of him. But as long as he's getting that power play deployment, I'm definitely a fan. Really good hits if your league counts those. And only 15% rostered, so certainly worth a look in some deeper leagues. 3 more forwards here, guys. Connor Zary of the Calgary Flames. Dual eligibility, which is solid. Really solid deployment so far. 18 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time per game is elite. He's 4th on the team in power play time per game. He's on the first line power play. And the only downside is the lack of peripherals, the lack of shots, hits, and blocks, especially his shot volume is not great. So depends on your league, guys, but I think in some deeper leagues where he could be available because he's only 16% rostered, he's certainly worth a look. The next player we have to talk about, and this pains me to say, guys, Stefan Noesen of the New Jersey Devils. The reason he's a must-add player is because he's currently on the top power play unit over Timo Meier. Now, do I know if this is going to last? No, I don't know what they are going to do with this top unit. But the fact is that he was a great net front player on the Hurricanes last year and the year prior. He put up a lot of power play points in those 2 years. And the Devils power play has been struggling, so they might want to mix it up. It might make sense to have a righty on there because Bratt, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Timo Meier are all lefties. So having a righty there could be beneficial, right? It's all about chemistry and positions on the power play. It's not just who's the best player available. So yeah, we'll see, guys. I mean, I'm not happy about it. I drafted a lot of Timo Meier in my best ball drafts. I told you guys to draft Timo Meier, so I apologize if this sticks. That would definitely suck. But for now, if you're in a deeper league, especially if your league counts hits, because this guy can put up 150 plus hits, I would definitely take a look at him. The last player we have to talk about is Kirby Dach. Yes, he hasn't produced, and yes, he hasn't looked great on the first power play unit. But the fact is the deployment is still there. He's in the top 6 on the second line, and he's on that first power play. So as long as he's getting this deployment, he's underrated in my opinion. He puts up really good peripherals. So that's a plus if your league values those. And even though he only is center eligibility, 6% rostered, in my opinion, is far too low. Now, just quickly, some percentages that I think are too low on Yahoo. Jake Sanderson, this guy should be close to 100% rostered at this point. Seth Jones, yes, his plus minus might not be that good, but he's looked really good out there. He's definitely producing. Matvei Michkov, his ice time is so good, guys, and he has the breakout potential. So I think he should definitely be looked at. Bo Horvat, Nazem Kadri, I know they're only pure centers, but this is too low, guys. They have the potential to be really good. Kadri puts up monster peripherals, too, if your league values hits, shots. The shot volume is crazy with Kadri. Then some more players here. Pavel Buchnevich, Jared McCann, Martin Necas. I think their roster percentage is going to go up from this number. We'll see what happens. Then the players with a too high of a roster percentage. These players are Brandon Hagel, because he's not on the first unit. He's with worse line mates as well this year. Gustav Forsling, I just think he's overrated in fantasy. Brent Burns, way too high of a roster percentage. I think Gostisbehere is like 30 or 40% less rostered than Burns, which makes no sense, but it could be dead leagues. It could be people that, aren't paying attention to fantasy. I'm not sure. Thomas Harley, I just think his roster percentage is way too high. Jeff Skinner, way too high. His deployment is not that good, not on the first line power play. Noah Hannafin, this pains me to say, guys. I mean, the coach switched up last minute about this power play, and he doesn't put up good peripherals. So without this first line power play deployment, he's not going to be good in fantasy, and I would probably drop him in a lot of leagues, right? If my league is like 12 teams or less, I would consider dropping him. And some more players here. Frank Vitrano, not loving his deployment. It's going to hurt his peripherals. He's definitely going to see regression. Very high shooting percentage last year. Power play goals were crazy last year. Not sustainable. So just not a fan. I think you could drop him in some leagues, right? Depending on your league settings, depending on your league size. And then we have Brock Nelson. Nelson, even though he's played decent, he's not on the first line power play. Yes, they can put him back on there over Duclair. That could happen, but, I think Nelson has a similar roster percentage to Horvat and Kadri, which makes no sense to me. Lastly, we have Aaron Ekblad. The problem is that even when Boquist was injured, Ekblad wasn't on this first unit. It was Juvis Belinskis. I think that's how you pronounce the name. So yeah, that doesn't bode well for Ekblad owners. He's not going to be getting that power play deployment unless something changes. Boquist is healthy currently, so it's looking like Ekblad is third in the pecking order on that power play, and without that power play deployment, he's not going to be that good. Some more players here. Paul Cotter moved up to line one with Jack Hughes. Solid hits. His goal scoring is going to regress, guys, so don't expect the production that we've been seeing, but could be good in some deeper leagues, considering he's line one currently. Anthony Beaulivier, line one with Crosby still. Mikael Granlund, line one and power play one with Macklin Celebrini out. And even when Celebrini was healthy, Granlund was on that top unit, so definitely a fan. And then Robbie Fabry, he's getting decent ice time right now. He's in the top 6, puts up good hits, certainly an option in some deeper leagues. And then some guys that aren't necessarily deeper league ads, they could be rosterable in some more shallow leagues. Those two guys being Eli Tolvanen and Jake Neighbors. Now, Tolvanen's deployment is trash, but he puts up elite blocks and hits, so really depends on your league settings. But, in a Bangers league or a category league, he has a lot of value. And then Jake Neighbors. Neighbors is still power play one. He puts up really good hits. He's young. He has some breakout potential mixed in there. Last year, his goal scoring may have been a little bit unsustainable, but as long as he's power play one and in the top 6, he's going to be solid.
All right, quick edit here, guys. Alex Nedeljkovic was called back up from his AHL conditioning stint. He's currently practicing. Don't know exactly when he's coming back, but he could easily be the number one guy moving forward. So definitely worth a look if you need a goalie.
All right, guys, let's talk about some goalies. I want to say right off the bat that goalie ads highly depend on your league settings and your scoring values. This means whether you're in a category league or a points league, it's going to matter quite a bit in which categories are counted. So it's hard to tell you exactly which goalies to pick up, but I can give you some goalies that have gained value. With that being said, Philip Gustafsson has certainly gained value. Seen a lot of volume, which we weren't sure about with Fleury still there, Jesper Wallstedt. But yeah, he's played really good. He's getting the volume. The only concern I have is Jared Spurgeon potentially being injured. That's definitely not the best for their defense. And this Wild defense just can't stay healthy. So we'll see how that turns out. But even with Spurgeon out in the last game, Gus played good. So I still think Gus is a great ad. Moving down, we have Anthony Stolarz. Yes, Wool seems to be returning soon, but Stolarz has played really well. In a category league, he's going to be really good. And volume-wise, it might not be the best, right? If you're in a points league, the volume might not be the best, but I could see him splitting with Wool for the foreseeable future. And also, Wool can't stay healthy. So if Wool gets injured again, Stolarz is going to see a lot of games. Then we have Sam Montembeault. Obviously, he wasn't going to be like the best goalie ever. The Montreal defense isn't the best, but he seems to be the number one guy. Yes, Primo could get some starts and steal some starts from Montembeault in the future, but I'm potentially seeing a volume guy in the future where he's getting peppered with shots and playing a lot of games. So definitely has value. There's some more goalies here. Peter Mrazek of the Chicago Blackhawks. Not the best in category leagues. Not advocating for you to add him in there, but in points leagues, that value volume, like Yahoo default, he's going to be good. Like, he's going to see a lot of games. He's going to see a lot of shots against. And the Blackhawks made some improvements as well from last year. So, yeah, I'm definitely a fan. I have Mrazek in one of my leagues. I have him because I didn't draft a lot of goalies too high, and I picked him up off the wire, and it's Yahoo default goalie settings, so he'll be good. Next up is Samuel Ersson. I think he's way better than Ivan Fedorov. He is going to see the bulk of the starts for the Flyers. Unsure of his category value, but the volume is going to be there, and he's going to be solid. Then we have Destin Wolf. I could see him splitting with Vladar for the entire year, so the volume might not be there, but he's played really good so far, and he's definitely worth taking a look at in case he keeps up his performance, right? Like, they're going to have to start in more games and potentially give him the crease if he outperforms Vladar. Next up is Joseph Wool. Yes, he's a Band-Aid, but it sounds like he's going to be returning soon, maybe as early as this week. So, yeah, definitely worth taking a look at if he's on your wire. Next is Joel Blomqvist of the Pittsburgh Penguins, starting way more games than Jari at this point because Jari has been so bad and Blomqvist has been good. Not sure of his value when Nedeljkovic comes back. And Nedeljkovic got sent down to the AHL for a conditioning stint. So he'll be back soon. And once that happens, I'm not sure how many games Blomqvist is going to get. With that being said, until that happens, Blomqvist is certainly a good ad because he's getting starts. Kevin Lankinen, in my opinion, he's better than Shelovs. He's definitely looked better than him. And until Demko returns, he could see a decent amount of games and put up some good performances. Next up, Lucas Dostal. Gibson's out for a couple of more weeks, so Dostal's going to see good volume, get peppered with shots. Not going to see a lot of wins, and he's not going to be the best in category leagues, but in terms of volume, he'll be good short term. Then the rest of these goalies here, Joe Holfer, I think the ceiling for him is splitting with Binnington, so not expecting him to completely steal the crease, but he may have earned some more starts with his recent performance. And we know Benner is a streaky goalie. So I think in some leagues, if you're desperate for a goalie, Hofer could be a good option. Next up, we have Anton Forsberg of the Ottawa Senators. Allmark is dealing with a lower body injury, I believe. Don't think it's too serious, but we don't have a timeline just yet. So until Allmark comes back, Forsberg could be a good stream. Then finally, David Raddysh. Kemper is out. I think it's only day-to-day, so not a long-term hold, but maybe for the next couple of games or so, Raddysh could be good. One last goalie here is Justice Noonan. I understand Bednar keeps going with Georgiev, so not the best for Noonan. But if Georgiev keeps getting shelled, they're going to give Noonan more starts. So, if you're desperate for a goalie, he's certainly worth holding on to see what happens. All right, moving on to the schedule. Let's talk about the teams with the most off nights here. But before I talk about these teams, guys, I do want to mention that I'm not categorizing Thursday as an off night because it's not. There's 9 games, so 18 teams are playing. But some of you may have an open roster spot on Thursday. So make sure you check out your weekly schedule and see if there's any open roster spots, because that would make some of these teams have an extra off night, right? Like the Devils. Right now, they have 4 games and 2 off nights. But if Thursday you have an open roster spot, they're going to have 3 off nights for you. With that being said, guys, not the best options for streaming this week because there's no teams that have 3 off nights or more. But the 2 teams that do have the best schedules are the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia Flyers. The Devils and the Flyers have 4 games and 2 off nights, so they're solid for maximizing your games. And then the teams that have 4 games and 1 off night are the Maple Leafs, the Lightning, and the Red Wings. There's also 2 teams that have 3 games and 2 off nights, which is solid, considering there's not a lot of teams with off nights this week. So those teams are the Ottawa Senators and the Edmonton Oilers. One thing to mention here, guys, is that every team plays on Tuesday night. So that's the reason for this. Tuesday is a very heavy night, and you're going to be benching a lot of players. Now, moving on to the teams with the least amount of games, we have 3 teams that only play twice, and they have 0 off nights. So not the best for maximizing your games. And those teams are the Vancouver Canucks, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Moving on to the streamers, guys, the Flyers, because they have 4 games and 2 off nights, they could be good streamers for this week. Owen Tippett, doubt he's available. He's like 90% rostered, but Matvei Michkov, Morgan Frost, line 1, first line power play, both of them. Then some other guys here, Tyson Forster, Joel Farabee, Jamie Drysdale, who is on the first line power play, Sean Couturier, Bobby Brink, Jet Luchenko. But I do want to say Luchenko could easily get sent down to the AHL or get scratched, so wouldn't necessarily pick him up. And then York, Sanheim, Zamula, some defensemen who can put up decent peripherals, maybe some points. And then some bangers category guys, Hathaway and Lawton. They put up really solid hits. Moving on to the Devil streamers, 4 games and 2 off nights. These guys are Nico Hischier. Highly doubt he's available unless your league is super shallow. Paul Cotter, who's first line with Jack Hughes right now. Don't know how long that's going to last, but could be a good option. Really good hits as well, so solid peripherals. Next, we have Stefan Noesen. He is on the first line power play over Timo Meier, which pains me to say. Not sure how long that's going to stick. But if he's on this first line power play for the entire week, he's going to be good. And he also puts up good peripherals as well. He puts up good hits. He's a good option. Then some more players here. Dawson Mercer, line 2, power play 2. Brendan Dillon puts up solid peripherals, especially hits. And then some deeper league options. Thomas Tatar, Eric Halla, Palat, Siegenthaler, Kovacevic, Casey, etc. Now, one strategy here is picking up players on Friday. The Senators, Oilers, and the Devils play on Friday and Sunday, which are 2 off nights. So Picking up these players on Friday and dropping them on Monday of the next week could be a viable strat. With the Senators, there's always good options. Batherson's pretty highly rostered, but could be available in a shallow league. Josh Norris is a great option to pick up Friday and get him for those 2 off nights. Claude Giroux, Thomas Chabot, Shane Pinto, David Perron, etc. And then with the Oilers, not the best options, but Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, Adam Henrique, Podkolzin. Skinner and Arvidsson could certainly have some decent games, so they're worth taking a look at for sure for this weekend. And then with the Devils, I mentioned the streamers already, but Nason, first line power play, Carter, first line, and then guys like Mercer, Dillon, etc. Now, I do want to tell you guys as well, there's only one game on Monday. Like I told you, every team plays on Tuesday, so that's just the way it shakes out. But that one game on Monday is the Leafs versus the Lightning. But that being said, if you currently have a comfortable lead in your matchup this current week, and you can afford to use an ad for the next week, you could pick up a player on one of these teams and get that extra game on Monday. The last thing I want to touch on here, and I already talked about it when I was talking about the most off nights, but there is a small chance that some of you may have an open roster spot on Thursday. And if that's the case, then certain teams have extra off nights that make them more viable than some other teams in terms of streaming. So with that being said, the Devils would have 3 off nights if that's the case for you. And then the Leafs, the Lightning, and the Red Wings would have 2 off nights. So make sure you check your week, like check your roster each night, see which open spots you have, and then pick up streamers accordingly. All right, quickly, here are the list of buy low players currently. I will be doing a video of buy lows and sell highs very soon, so I'm just listing off the buy lows right now. I wanted to give you guys the up-to-date information in case some of these guys go off in the next day or so and you can't get a deal on them anymore. So yeah, here's the list. These are players that should easily bounce back, in my opinion. Jack Hughes, Evan Bouchard, Carter Verhaeghe, Rasmus Dahlin, Alexander Barkov, who is currently injured, Roman Josi, Stuart Skinner, Dougie Hamilton, Steven Stamkos, Jason Robertson, Tage Thompson, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Matthew Barzal. There's definitely more players, but these are the ones that stood out to me at first glance. So yeah, try to get a good deal on these guys. It could pay off for you in the long run. All right, guys, that's the end of the video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.